Naka. Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Lee. I'm the National Programs Director for GSTC, and it is such a great pleasure to be here in this beautiful country with all of you today. So first, I want you to please welcome me and please join me in welcoming our wonderful panelists to the stage. Please come on up, give them a round, warm of applause. I will give them their proper introductions one by one when we get to their presentations. Just a few words to set the stage before we dive into the first technical session of this conference. It's a special feeling to wake up on an island, right? As we all did today. You get the sense that this is a magical place. You feel the history. You can feel the rich cultural traditions, the unique practices that are still being stewarded by the indigenous residents. You can feel the sense of the far distances that our ancestors traveled in the past to explore and populate the earth. So that sense is all around us. And no wonder that islands are extreme attractions for people. No wonder people are drawn to water, to land, to that unique mix between the two where they can really feel the history and their humanity. The tourism industry, of course, has followed suit, right, for this human inclination to great success. And coastal and marine tourism is the largest segment of the global tourism industry today, with tourism concentrated on the coastlines of most countries that are involved in this sector. It has brought many benefits to island countries, elevating them to the global consciousness and developing internationally renowned tourism sectors. It is an amazing story to celebrate as we're celebrating this week. But as we know, there are drawbacks, of course, to this traditional model of island tourism. The tourism sector may bypass entire islands and communities for various reasons, especially those that are living in remote inland areas. These communities may not have any involvement, let alone ownership of the local tourism economy. But the tourism industry, as ever, is changing. Local and indigenous peoples are voicing their concerns and demanding that they have a say in how tourism is developed in their homes. Tourists are increasingly looking for more connections to the places they visit, for cultural experiences and to step out of their beautiful resorts. And tourism is more competitive than ever. So countries are seeking to capture more and higher tourism value, and hopefully under the growing ethos of sustainability. So it's very exciting to moderate this session, Islands Inland, not only sea and sun. We're talking about opportunities for diversifying island tourism. We have an excellent line of speakers. I will introduce them one by one as they come up. And before we get started, I first want to note that we will be using Snapsite. So this session summarizes highlights and live transcripts from the session. So no need to take notes, please just enjoy and listen. And if you have any questions for the audience, for our panelists as we go on, please go to slido.com, enter hashtag GSTC2025. We're in the room DICC, and you can write in your questions. And through the event, you also have the opportunity to upvote those questions that you want to see answered by our panelists. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome our first speaker. Her name is Natalie Kidd. She is the Managing Director, Asia, and Head of Global Operations at Intrepid Travel, the world's largest provider of adventure travel and experiences. Natalie joined Intrepid in 2005 as the founding general manager of the first vertically integrated destination management company, or DMC, based in Hanoi, Vietnam. And over the years, she grew this one DMC into a global network of 25 inbound tour operators. She has previously held the roles of Chief Operating Officer and Chief People and Purpose Officer, also with Intrepid. And Natalie has served as Board Director of GSTC. Thank you so much, Natalie. The floor is yours.
Hola. Thank you, Wendy, for the introduction. And thank you everybody for being here. The GSTC events are always a wonderful opportunity to come together with people trying to take our industry forward in as sustainable a manner as possible. For those of you who don't know anything about Intrepid, Intrepid was founded 36 years ago by two friends out of Melbourne, Australia, and they wanted to start a business that did tourism differently. They didn't want to do tourism by just taking people to the famous sites. They wanted to take people as though they were going on a holiday with a group of friends, but in a way that they could connect with experiences rather than just look at sites. 36 years later, Intrepid is now a truly global organisation. We have offices and teams in 35 countries around the world, and we take travellers on small group adventures in over 100 countries. We like to call our type of product sustainable experience-rich travel. Keeping in mind Randy's words from this morning, knowing that sustainability is an ongoing journey we will always be on. But our focus remains being able to take people and change their perspectives on the world, to connect and understand culture and appreciate the host destinations, be respectful for host communities, and look after the environment, while at the same time enjoying their holiday. So today we're talking about islands inland. For me, the focus is more so about not only sea and sun. Not that there's anything wrong with sea and sun, but for those people who see the idyllic pictures of tropical islands, what we almost always see is the pictures of the palm tree, the beautiful sand, the blue sky and the blue sea. And a great part of travel, or a large part of travel, is people coming to those destinations, checking in to an all-included resort and spending the next week on the deck chair. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, we would recommend that for a number of days. But doing only that limits us. It limits tourism in the opportunities and the benefits that we can create, both for our travelling customers as well as our host communities. The types of opportunities that we believe tourism can provide are really threefold, and I'd like to talk about three examples that we at Intrepid think are really important when we're delivering a tourism product. The first is the socio-economic value. The value we can provide in the destination by bringing travellers in. Now, of course, if you come and stay in a resort, that's hopefully providing jobs to local people, but we really want to make tourism more accessible. So it's about getting out of your cruise ship or your hotel and really connecting more broadly and more widely. We think deeply about how we create economic livelihoods for the little entrepreneurs, whether they're a small food stand, a souvenir seller, or whether they're working to protect the world's culture, environment and diversity. In many of our trips, we'll integrate talks with national park rangers, ways to connect and ways to involve a much broader part of the community. We will also focus on accessibility for people who are less represented in tourism, be they women, other less afforded opportunities, Indigenous communities, anyone who wants to be involved in tourism. We look for opportunities to give them that access. The second area where tourism can create a huge benefit is in the preservation of culture and the preservation of our natural environment. When we take our customers out and get them to engage one-on-one with local communities and learn about their culture respectfully, they're having an experience that they will remember and take home with them. It also shows the local community the value of their culture, and hopefully shows those people and their future generations the value in maintaining those cultures and sharing their learnings more broadly with international visitors. We have many examples where tourism has enabled the protection of natural environments by, again, putting a value on accessibility to that place, whether it's mountains or rivers, whether it's protecting the biodiversity that we want to come and see. By bringing the tourism connection to the natural environment, we give it a value that hopefully will facilitate the protection of that environment going forward. And the third area that is really important is the people-to-people connection. Sadly, our world has never been more disconnected than it is today. From armed conflicts through to tense geopolitical situations. We have some world leaders who would like to teach us to not trust your neighbour, and even less trust people on the other side of the world. Tourism has that unique ability to break down barriers. Just last week, I was privileged enough to have lunch with Australia's Foreign Minister, and she was talking about the current world, geopolitical tensions that she deals with, and talked about the importance of diplomacy. But when she wrapped up the lunch with us, she said, you know, you all in the tourism industry have a unique opportunity, and that's to do diplomacy at scale, to bring people together. And that is something we try and do throughout our tours, to have people come together and learn about each other, to celebrate the differences, but more importantly, to understand that we're actually far more similar than we are different, and we have no need to be afraid of each other. At Intrepid, we call this our shared mission, creating positive change through the joy of travel. I'm going to touch very quickly on a couple of itineraries that we have launched in more recent years. This year is the first time as Intrepid we went into a new country, being the Maldives. When my team proposed starting up a tour in the Maldives last year, I think it was written off as it's not a very Intrepid destination. And they faced a bit of resistance to whether we could run a trip in our style in a coastal, island-based place that is predominantly known for its resort stays. But the team persisted and said, no, we believe we can do it. And what they have really focused on is where there are people and where there is culture, there are activities for us to learn and engage with. And perhaps surprisingly to some, but proving a lesson at the same time, one of our most successful new country launches has been an 8-day sailing trip in the Maldives. And while this is not necessarily inland tourism, what we're doing is certainly more than just sun and sea. It is a sailing-based trip, so there's a lot of sun and sea, but every day we're going on land, meeting with different communities. Whether it's learning about the cuisine, one night we learn about the music, hearing about the traditions. In true form, as all Intrepid trips, it's about creating that connection. More locally, we also have a small range of product here in the Pacific. We do face a challenge though, and that is trying to get our customers to understand that you can come and do an Intrepid style tour, an Intrepid style holiday in a Pacific island. We partner with our good friends and our local experts, and I'll be handing over to Marita shortly, to help us bring this to life. But we say to our customers who are booking our Fiji trip, if you want the traditional sand and sun beach break, book extra days, because that's not what you're getting with us. We're taking you inland, we're taking you trekking, We're taking you to stay in villages, meet local people. So again, it's very much about creating that environment of doing something a little bit different, and through it, optimising what we can offer. The challenge we have continues to be getting that perception that there is more to do in these types of destinations than just the sunbed. In order to do that, we've recently, a couple of weeks ago, we brought a group of well-known travel and tourism journalists to Fiji and Samoa through support from the Australian development company MDF. And we brought them to Fiji to show them just what else can be done here. And they were overwhelmed with getting far more than what they were expecting. We proved to them that there is far more than what the travel brochures might sometimes show us, just in terms of the sun and the sea. So I'd like to wrap up, and in terms of how we do this, it is about connecting with local experts, and I'm sure Marita will be able to tell us more about the next stage of development in these types of programs. But I would encourage all of us, we have a unique opportunity in tourism. As we heard earlier, 1 in 10 people work in tourism. Let's make it add opportunity. Let's make it change the world and help us in creating positive change through the joy of travel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Please, if you have any questions for Natalie, go to slido.com, hashtag GSTC2025 in the DICC room and type in your questions. Next, I'm very pleased to welcome Marita Manley, originally from Wales, now based in Fiji. Marita is a climate change specialist and a reluctant entrepreneur. She co-founded Talanoa Treks in 2013 as an avenue to support community resilience in a more meaningful way. Shaped by community partners, Talanoa Treks supports them to tell their stories through multi-day hikes and gives visitors the opportunity to spend a few days in Itala'kai indigenous communities. Marita is passionate about supporting small businesses, particularly those that are indigenous and women-led. She co-founded the Dalvata Sustainable Tourism Collective in 2017, a support network that facilitates an accelerator program to ensure that startups benefit from the experience and knowledge of mentors across their collective. Thank you so much, Marita. The floor is yours.
So that was a little bit longer bio than I intended, but thank you very much, Wendy. Araniandra Dolongali, everyone. I'm really privileged to be with you today. I won't do an introduction because that's already been done for me, but I have spent most of my career working in the climate change space and continue to do so. And as small islands, when you think about the impacts of climate change, you're often thinking about the same things. You're thinking about the coastlines, the beaches, sea level rise. But those effects are also felt throughout our interiors. And working in the interior of Viti level, which is about as far away from this conference room a setting as you could possibly imagine, we see those effects daily. Now, just some history. The interior of Viti level was actually the last stand of resistance to colonization. And it is those interior communities that remain the stewards and the guardians of our rich lived culture here in Fiji. The cultural practices and norms that have shaped our business have been set from the outset by the communities that we partner with. And I can't speak about Talanoa Treks without acknowledging that my being here today is the result of the hard work of many elders in the communities that we work with, such as Mr. Rocco, who's in the middle of this photo, and all of their communities in the interior. Saravanoa, the Fijian word for tourist, literally translates to seeing the Vanoa. And so I want to pay my deepest respects to the Vanoa Navatusila, Onandrau, Onailuva, for their leadership in this space. We're called Talanoa Treks because we're more than just trekking. And we've used the concept of Talanoa at every stage of the journey. So the years of Talanoa that it took to set up Talanoa Treks, sitting with our community partners, the Talanoa with the provincial offices, communities, civil society organizations, have really shaped the way that we feel partnerships should and could be done. We have regular ongoing Talanoa, informal and formal, that make sure it all works. And I always joke with my team that I know when something's gone wrong, when that Talanoa goes quiet and we're not hearing regularly about the challenges that everybody is facing in making all of this work. The Talanoa between guests and visitors allow guests to gain a glimpse into Fijian culture as part of their visit. And there's reciprocation by giving our guides and hosts a glimpse into the cultures of our guests that are visiting. Now, none of this happens accidentally. This happens with intention, and it happens by being values-driven first. So this might be what you read on our website. It's really easy to say and to write, but the journey has been hard. It's been driven from the bottom up. And this is the case for many tourism businesses in Fiji. We're really privileged that we work in a place where over 85% of the land is inalienably Indigenous owned. And working with communities to understand why they want to connect with tourism in the first place and supporting to do that on their own terms means that we regularly say no to partners who are not a good fit. Tourism is not the goal. Tourism is a means to an end. To support communities to welcome guests on their own terms, to strengthen environmental and cultural protection, and to connect with the tourism market, if they want to, in all of its imperfections. I first met Mr. Rocco 19 years ago, and 5 years later, having developed a relationship with that community, he asked if we thought there was a hiking tourism opportunity in what they did. And we enthusiastically agreed, not realizing that he wasn't asking us for advice, but that he was asking us to partner on making it happen. And we were really naive. We weren't tourism people by background, and none of the guides, the community guides who host you, the trip leaders, the women who cater in the village, none of us are tourism people. And we've learned a lot about the industry, often the hard way. But with lots of support along the way. And that means that visitors get an experience that is not manufactured. All of this is possible because of strong partnerships at all levels, and in spite of some of the structural power imbalances within the industry within which we work, which is part of what I want to focus on today. There are so many things that I love about this photo. And this is one of the photos that we have up in our office to remind us daily of the partnerships that we want to see in the tourism sector. It was taken in the highlands of Viti Level by a Fijian photographer, Alipati Levati, who I'm sure many of you know. And it's one of our lead community guides, Sarusi, and a visiting photographer. And to me, this speaks volumes about the dynamic we want to see in the tourism sector. This is about an equitable partnership. Sairusi's body language screams, I have the knowledge of my land, I have the wisdom of my ancestors, and I am gifting you access to that. These kind of partnerships are not always there in our tourism sector. The systems that shape the way the tourism sector currently operates can sometimes reinforce the type of tourism that we see prevalent in our mainstream tourism sector. When we first sat down with the communities and with our partners to discuss the kind of tourism that they wanted, they asked what they would have to do to be part of the tourism sector. They asked, do we have to dress up as warriors? Do we have to do a meke? And even in remote communities in Viti Level, that was their perception of what tourism meant. And that's a bit depressing. The part of our industry that wants volume has its place. It funds our roads, our hospitals, our schools through tourism taxes. But it also wants formula, repeatable experiences. Some of that is necessary. But our business is based on minimizing the disruption to our partner communities and recognizing that tourism is a useful addition to their agricultural incomes, not creating a dependency on it. So when a partner asks, Can we play rugby at 4 p.m. in the village? Our response is, sure, if the community happens to be playing rugby at 4 p.m., you are very welcome to join them. But no, we can't schedule that into our itinerary. That's not the way we work. There is a tension at the heart of many of these conversations. Demand has shifted, yes, in a good way. People want more meaningful travel experiences, and they want to engage with communities. But the same structures that created the power imbalances we see in the first place are still at play. Power rests with the large players, 30 to 60-day invoicing cycles, the desire for things to be laid on a plate, the neat itineraries. Greenwashing is alive and well. But there is hope. I was privileged to meet some of the Pacific students that led the recent case to the International Court of Justice that has resulted in an advisory opinion on the responsibility of states on climate change. And I just want to give them a bit of a shout out, actually, because that was a major moment of celebration in the Pacific. Their hope is infectious. The hope of future generations believing that they can change things despite all of the challenges that we face, is what gives cynics like me hope for the future. And that is also true of many of my mentors in this room, people like my fellow Duavata members, Jenny, Cassie, Gareth, and many others who have given their advice and experience to those walking in their footsteps. Things are shifting. We're seeing a lot of positive changes within the industry. And as we went through the standards training that I attended on Sunday and Monday, I was reflecting on that shift. It was great to hear destination management organizations talking about wastewater problems. It was great to see hotels measuring the amount of water it takes when somebody gets in and out of a pool, or the food waste that they're generating. And they know this because they're now measuring it, thanks to many of you in the room. As a social enterprise that has always had a sustainability policy in place, we don't use single-use plastic, we have had a leave no trace policy for guests from the beginning, and if you've ever had the privilege of being hosted by a Fijian community, you'll know that food waste isn't really a thing. But our planet and our people need more than guests that want to plant mangroves or trees, thinking that they are offsetting their impact. They need to know that a small action will not save the world, but it may help them reflect on what more they can do within their own behavior and within their own homes when they go back after an experience. We need to shift the narrative that centers the guests and centers the communities that are hosting them. So as a visitor to the communities we partner with, you might not get a chance to plant a tree because it might be the wrong time of year to plant it. But you can contribute to the community-led agroforestry initiatives that the community are leading to address land degradation. We also know that to develop curated itineraries to remote places takes work. Strong partnerships recognize that this is not a transactional relationship. Our trainer this week, David, used a well-quoted phrase, "Change moves at the speed of trust." And we found that to be true across the sector in Fiji. The Duavata Sustainable Tourism Collective, which we're proud members of, has trust at its foundation, knowing that we are all working together to support the same kind of values-driven experiences, that support resource owners manage their land and their ocean, and that we expect guests to come with open hearts and minds to experience Fiji as it is. Within Fiji, we're seeing more and more partners understand and do the work that is required to shift systems. We have strong partnerships with Tourism Fiji, conservation organizations, and I'm delighted to see so many of them in the room today, and other tourism partners keen to know how they can best support us. We're blessed to be working with international partners that are intentional and open in their approach. And I'm not just saying this because Natalie's up on stage with me, but Intrepid have been a big part of that. They've got a full-time climate scientist as part of their team who we've had lots of advice from. When we were starting our Tourism Accelerator program and I reached out to them, they immediately jumped on board to offer masterclasses for startups in the sector. And when I asked for advice on transitioning our company to an employee-owned model, expecting to have some examples from their network, I was sent an invite for a call with their co-founder, which left me a little bit intimidated. I'm excited over the next few days to understand how we, and the small collective that we're members of, can contribute to that shift. I know you're all in the room because you feel likewise, and to deliver tourism that benefits our communities that are keen to be part of the tourism sector, and to also identify when tourism is not a good fit for their goals. Vinaka Vakalevu, and I'm sure I'll have lots of conversations in Talanoa with all of you in the room. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Marita. Please keep those questions coming at slido.com. And lastly, I'm happy to welcome Jennifer Lowe, the CEO and co-founder of Travaras, a curated marketplace for regenerative travel experiences. For 17 years in travel and hospitality, her career spans hotel operations, travel tech, and global marketplace expansion. She helped launch Get Your Guide in the Americas and recently earned her executive MBA from UC Berkeley Haas, focusing on innovation and sustainability. And today she's applying that expertise to transform travel into a force for good. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer.
Amazing. I am so grateful to be here today and to be surrounded by such incredible people working on transforming travel into a force for good. Just like what we heard earlier during our welcome reception, we really do want to reimagine travel into a way that actually benefits local communities and protects people and planet. So here at Travaras, we are a regenerative travel platform that really focuses on supporting locally owned businesses that are culturally rooted, so that we can help travelers connect with these more immersive, culturally authentic experiences. But this actually starts way back when I used to work in Hawaii. I was a hotel operations manager, leading the lead EBOM certification for the hotel. It was the first hotel in the entire state of Hawaii to be LEED certified. And this was something that came after many years of convincing the board of directors and the GM and the owners of the hotel to invest in the sustainability certification and transition. And through that process, it was really rooted in this Hawaiian concept of kuleana and taking care of your land, your people, your community. And it's really a systems approach to stewardship. So in Hawaii, we have something called the Akua'a system. It's a way of managing the land from Mauka to Makai, from the mountain to the sea. And this means that we can't just only take care of the things on the ocean front or the things that are popular, but actually everything is interconnected, and we really need to think of taking care of our systems from a systems level perspective. And so with Travaras, we really think about looking at the entire system of tourism and how do we ensure that we're not just sending everybody to the top 10 places and the top 10 things to do, but rather inland more towards culturally immersive, community-led experiences. But the problem today, as you've heard earlier, the distribution models really perpetuate this idea of mass tourism. So when you think about the incentives for a travel agent, they're most likely going to send you to the hotel that is the most popular with the most availability, that gives them the most commission so that they get a big commission check. Same with online travel agencies. They tend to send people to the most popular destinations with the most high converting activity or hotel accommodation, what have you. So OTAs are traditionally very algorithm driven. They surface what's popular, what's available, and what pays the most in commissions, which isn't aligned with what the community actually needs. So the result is that cultural, community-based, and off-the-beaten-path experiences, like what we heard from Rita, are oftentimes not really shown on traditional OTA marketplaces. And oftentimes, like she also mentioned, they also don't necessarily have the largest margins to give huge commissions. So if you're a globally owned corporate company, running in 20 destinations, you can maybe offer a 40% commission at the expense of your local community. But, you know, for people like Marita, 40% commission is insane. So that just is not possible. So this is why, you know, regenerative experiences really need a different type of platform. Many regenerative experiences are not built for scale. They're not trying to operate 7 days a week at the convenience of the tourists. Oftentimes, regenerative experiences are intentionally small scale. They only run a few days a week and in line with what is culturally relevant to them. They also focus on quality over quantity. And also not all non-cultural practitioners are are ready for tourism. And in many cases, they don't have 24/7 booking systems, reservation management tools, they don't have a massive ad budget. They're not experts in marketing. They're experts in their cultural practice. And so for us, we believe in order to build a new kind of travel system, we need to have a new kind of marketplace. So our solution is really, Travaras is a new kind of marketplace for a new kind of traveler. We recently saw in the latest Skift report that over 90% of travelers have surveyed that they do want to travel more sustainably, but they don't know how to. And actually 70% of them did try to find sustainable experiences, might have found Intrepid, which they're amazing, by the way. But apart from that, it really is hard to find culturally immersive, authentic experiences that are truly locally owned and serve the local communities. So we are building a new kind of marketplace that's focused on hyper-curation. We co-create experiences with our cultural practitioners in destination, and we really focus on aligning our goals around community goals, ecological health, and also impact. So our goal is to curate a marketplace of a lot of high impact but low footprint experiences. And like I said, we're targeting the responsible traveler, which is one of the fastest growing segments in travel. More and more people are looking to get connected to truly immerse in authentic cultural experiences, and they just don't know how to find that. And also not able to find people that are offering these types of experiences. So our case study is with Waipa Foundation. It is a native Hawaiian-run apua'a system in Kauai. They are a nonprofit organization. They are stewards to the land. They manage the land all the way from the top of the mountain all the way to the ocean. And they run 3 different experiences throughout the week that are rooted in Hawaiian cultural practices. They're not a luau. They're not running 7 days a week. They're not trying to get more tourists. But the problem with this nonprofit is that they're funded by grants. And a lot of these grants, at least in the US, are starting to be sunset or not offered any longer. Their program specifically is funded by the King Kamehameha grant, which is now basically eliminating their grant funding in the next 2 to 3 years. So how do they continue to maintain their stewardship to this native Hawaiian foodways program? So they're now just dipping their toes into tourism, but they don't necessarily want to work with the traditional OTAs and distribution channels. These OTAs oftentimes have exploitive or predatory practices that require really large commissions and also lots of availability and so on and so forth. So it's almost like a commoditization of culture. So we're trying to avoid that by supporting companies like Waipa. And ultimately, they're now inviting guests to their home that has historically been only available to the local community in order to be financially sustainable for generations to come. But that's basically Travaras in a nutshell. And our goal here is to really showcase and highlight the incredible work that these local practitioners are doing and connect travelers to these cultural practitioners. And if you'd like to connect, this is the app, I think, that you can scan, and it'll add your contact. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to our speakers. We're seeing how people in the industry are doing the really hard work of working with communities to develop these tourism experiences and then doing the equally hard work of getting those onto the marketplace for the for the travelers that are looking for these types of experiences is not easy. And I really commend them for their great efforts and their successes so far. Thank you so much. And please, let's keep the questions coming on Slido. I don't think I need to repeat the instructions again, right? I've said it multiple times. But while you add a couple of more questions, let me kick one off for all three of our panelists. So you're all tour operators speaking from the private sector side, and we have many representatives of DMOs and government agencies here in the audience. What actions do you want to see with them? What collaborations do you want to see with them to promote inland tourism? And why don't we start with Natalie, and we'll go down the line. Thanks.
Great. Am I on? Yes, I'm on. Great question. At Intrepid, we love working with DMOs. And it's really about, I think partnerships in general are so important for everything we're trying to do, whether it's private-public, whether it's private with government, it's super important. In a number of countries around the world, we've got very successful partnerships with the local DMOs where we're looking at the element of tourism that we can deliver, but they're looking at how they want their destination to be represented. They're guiding us on the areas and the type of growth they're looking for. But in the case specifically with island tourism, I think it comes back to how do we change that narrative and that perception that all you can do is lie in the sun. And I know it is changing, and I believe that Fiji tourism is really been quite active in that space. But when we look at our product, particularly in, say, Pacific Island countries, what we deliver isn't necessarily what people are looking for. It's not what people expect. And that's a good thing, but we do need to get people understanding that there is so much to do here. There is so much culture. You know, the types of examples that we've seen are brilliant. They're the types of things that our kind of travellers want to do, but they've got to know it exists. So I think working with the DMOs to not always put up that pretty picture of the palm tree, but trying to represent what else the destinations have would be really helpful.
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, we've seen a really big shift in the time that we've been operating. So we have a really strong partnership with Tourism Fiji, and I'm actually late for lunch with them. But Tourism Fiji, both staff members, current and previous, I can see some of them in the room, have always been championing a diverse experience range. The problem, which goes back to the power imbalances, is that they are relatively under-resourced as well. So if you've got big organizations who can serve them up on a plate, their content schedules, etc., that's what they're going to push out. They have been making a lot of meaningful efforts recently to shift that. Fijians, as you probably know, are natural storytellers. So we're really lucky that some of the most unique experiences in the country are also where the best stories are. So we get a lot of support in hosting writers, in hosting photographers, to be able to tell those stories. And we have a lot of content that then is produced that we can help with our very tiny, if not negligible marketing budgets. So we have had a lot of support in that space. We've also had a lot of support from the government entity itself in helping to include the voices of the communities that we represent in actual national policy conversations as well. This is really timely for the Fiji government because they are in the process of developing national standards. So we feel privileged and honoured to be kind of part of that wider conversation. So I think it definitely has changed over the years. And we have, hopefully a growing and trusted relationship with all of those actors in the space.
Okay, so from a OTA perspective, I think one thing that would be really helpful just in general in tourism is to have stronger global standards. I know that we talked about this a little earlier today with Randy, but having accredited certification agencies and having these certification agencies be accessible to locally owned operators, maybe that don't have as much resources to invest in a sustainability certification, it helps companies like Travaras be able to curate and aggregate these types of operators instead of greenwashing or just trying to find anyone and everyone that's locally owned. Ideally, for us, we also follow the GSTC standards and really look to curate and partner with local operators that are culturally, rooted and also environmentally conscious, but also locally owned, so that we ensure that your tourism dollars are staying in the local economy and in the hands of locals. I think like having a standardized certification system, no matter what destination, is super, super helpful.
Thank you so much. Great points. And we have so many questions coming in from Slido that let's go directly to those. And I see many of you have already upvoted the ones you want to hear our panelists touch on. So let's go to the first one, which also follows from Jennifer's point about a sustainability standard. So Joseph is asking, how can we ensure that the inevitable transformations driven by tourism in island communities are productive rather than destructive? So what are you doing in terms of sustainability as you're working with the communities? And why don't Jennifer, you go first, and we'll go back down the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great question. I think a lot of times when people think about technology platforms like Booking.com or TripAdvisor or Expedia, you're oftentimes thinking about working with partners that are built for scale. And so with Travaras, we are intentionally working with locally owned operators that don't necessarily run 7 days a week. And we do a lot of pre-trip education for our travelers to understand why they can't go on this specific tour on a Monday when it's convenient for them. And I think part of this transformation more towards a regenerative tourism model is rooted in education. Like, we need to educate travelers pre-trip, during the trip, post-trip, to really prepare for experiencing a new culture, a new destination, but also to do it respectfully, with an open mind, with curiosity. And then also post-trip, we do focus on, reflections and takeaways from that cultural experience.
Thanks for the question. I think this is so important for any community-based tourism. I've been frustrated over the years where you see product development or tour operators talking about how difficult it is to create community-based tourism. And they talk about the creation of it. They talk about finding the community and getting it started. For me, that's the easy bit. The real challenge is, how do you make it sustainable? How do you manage the changes? How do you prepare the community for what it will look like 2, 5 or more years down the track? And this is why sustainability is a journey. It keeps changing. But I think it really relies on tourism operators who have experience educating and talking very, very carefully with communities before they get involved in tourism. I think Marita was saying it's not for everyone, and that's very much the case. But sometimes they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what changes they might foresee getting involved in tourism. And I think it really is incumbent upon us, where we know what some of those changes will be, both for good and for bad, that we're communicating that with them. That, particularly if they're going all in for tourism, what changes does that mean to their community? I think the ability to balance an ongoing income stream, whether it's agriculture or fishing or whatever they might do naturally, to slowly integrate some form of tourism, to regularly review the impacts, and hopefully to work with operators who want to go through that partnership with them and listen to them and make adjustments as you go. But maintaining the progress and the sustainability of any one of these types of activities over time is super critical, because otherwise it will change the community and ultimately may not still be successful 5 years down the track if we don't kind of work through that together.
Hello. Thank you, Natalie and Jennifer. And I think your comments link well to the next question on the screen. And maybe Marita, you can answer this because some of your initiatives are around these Indigenous entrepreneurs, right? So how can we support Indigenous communities to create their own programs rather than rely on expertise from foreign operators that may be diluting the economic benefits?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Great questions, and I'll address the top two together if that's okay. Absolutely agree. It shouldn't be me sitting up here. It should be one of our community partners. And when I say community partners, they are running their own businesses. So each of the communities we work with have community enterprises. So this isn't Talanoa Treks. We focus on the marketing and the logistics. Each of those communities that we work with are running their own community enterprises. And we support them with backstopping. Actually, several of them are going through the process of formalizing those businesses from being informal, community-led, community-run, within the Bossa del Coro, within the traditional systems, to being formal businesses at the moment. I think one of the things that needs to happen in that space is partnerships, which is part of what we talked about. There are some very well-intentioned programs out there that support Indigenous communities to try and enter the tourism space. Sometimes, not always, they are doing so without the expertise of the private sector, which doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to support communities to enter the tourism space, you need tourism people, ideally communities that have walked that path already. We're really privileged within Duavata that we have many community-owned and led operators who can provide that kind of mentoring support. But it requires government, it requires the parties that are trying to support that process to recognize their own expertise and what they bring to the table, and the expertise that the private sector and Indigenous-led operations elsewhere in the space can also bring to the table. And we're seeing that happen more and more. So please, all of you in the room that are part of those partnerships, encouraging all of those to scale. The second question, I am very happy to pull out our numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head. But one of the things I would like to talk about is the process. So our accounts are completely open to the communities that we work with. Every year, as part of our regular review meetings, we present back our revenue and the revenue that has gone directly to the community enterprises to the community to discuss that. We have a nice little value chain diagram which shows, how much goes to the website, liability insurance, commissions, tax, etc. To help all of us in the space understand where every chunk of the money that a guest pays goes. And the question about community development fund really goes back to that model. We don't have a community development fund because the communities have their own community development funds or their own businesses. So that we see quite a lot in the space that tourism operators will talk about, we have an education development fund, we have a da-da-da-da fund, which to me is not a genuine partnership. It's still that paternalistic, we think we know what's better for your community, and we think it should be education. So often we don't know how the community spends the revenue that they earn because they earn it, and it is their right to decide how they spend that in the way that they think is most useful for them. So each of our community enterprises that we partner with spend it in very different ways. Some of them use it for community infrastructure, some of them use it for education purposes, and that is their right as the business owners and the communities that we're working with.
Thank you, Marita. Jennifer, I like to give you two questions. There are two questions. This is an interesting one. Then I like to get your view on whether you agree with this, that the visitor experience often becomes bifurcated, that the colonized coast is versus the indigenous interior. And do you have more examples of where this is integrated? I think this is an interesting question for you because of this, is it called the reef to, what do you call it? The mountain to reef approach that you take. And then there's also a question about what recommendations do you have for travel agencies that are balancing profitability versus focusing on authentic/local experiences? Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is interesting because during my time at Get Your Guide, when we were opening up island destinations, tropical destinations, we'd always say, if it floats or flies, it's going to make money. And sure enough, 80% of our revenue came from the same 20% of the operators, right? And these were the big globally owned operators that could run all the time. And so yes, it definitely was very colonized in that sense. And I think part of integrating sustainability practices into your company, your strategy, is to ensure that you're educating travelers on what is available. So one of the initiatives that I had worked on during my time at Get Your Guide was supporting responsible tourism efforts and education to the travelers. And one of the things that we really attempted and pushed to do was to try to have recommendations. So everybody gets a booking confirmation. We want to be able to recommend certain activities or provide cultural education on these booking confirmation pages. But I think if your company isn't supporting or aligned with sustainability efforts, then that is not necessarily their goals, and that's not in line with their revenue targets and whatnot. And so for us at Travaras, we think about transparency and this education and building trust through each step of the customer journey. And I think as more and more companies do that, whether it's Booking or TripAdvisor or Expedia, I think that will help kind of spread the tourism dollars, not just to the coast, but also inland. That helps. But I think when it comes to examples where this has been more integrated, honestly, it really hasn't. I think like mentioned, these distribution channels, they're very algorithm driven. They do tend to send people to the same places that are in the highest demand. So we're probably going to continue to see that unless that changes. But I do think that on the demand side, from a customer perspective, a traveler perspective, there are shifting mindsets. And so that's something where we believe that by building a different way of travel, a different platform that's really focused on the inland, more indigenous, experiential, bookable activities, that's going to be the shift that kind of forces, other agencies to also follow in suit. And when it comes to travel agencies, it really is, it's interesting because when you think about every type of distribution channel, whether it's a wholesaler or group travel or travel agent or OTA or what have you, everybody has different incentives. And I think ultimately, what everybody in the travel space needs to do is to think about how can we create scenarios where it's a win-win-win for everyone. It's a win for our company so that we're profitable and have revenue. It's a win for the customers so that they get the experience that they're really looking for. But it's also a win for the local communities in which they're operating so that the communities aren't feeling like they're exploited or that tourism is extractive. But yeah, I think that's a shift that needs to happen across the entire supply chain.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we're running close to the end. So I want to give the last question to Natalie. I'm going to give you two questions. I'm going to give you this question about leakage. How does Intrepid see and think about and measure leakage? What proportion of visitors spending that actually remains in the community versus going to outside operators? And it's a big and difficult issue to report on. And then if you can close off on some lessons that you've learned from developing island tourism. What lessons has Intrepid learned from island communities that have reshaped how you design future experiences? Thanks.
Okay, two big questions. Leakage is, as I think the question noted, it is a really big and difficult topic, and it's difficult to measure. The first thing I will say very transparently, for a business like Intrepid, we are a for-profit business. We're a global business, and we have shareholders who want a shareholder return. So we're not a not-for-profit, but we do commit the business to considering all shareholders. So our financial, we support all stakeholders. So our financial shareholders are one of those stakeholders, and we unashamedly do work to make a profit as a business. That said, though, we have enshrined in our constitution that we also want to look after our workers, we also want to look after the environment, and we also want to look after the communities, the supply chains, and our customers. So all of those different stakeholders are taken into account. And so in terms of leakage, there are different allocations. There is a profit at the end of the day that is distributed in dividends. How we measure it, though, is particularly challenging. Our General Manager of Purpose, Sarah King's here, and I know she's been working with her team to look at how we measure what is done in country. And we've worked with a number of external operators who are trying to get this right. I don't know if any of them have absolutely nailed it. I mean, what we really do is try and have local people incorporate as many different elements and small operators into what we do, and encourage our customers to go out and spend money in the community. We purposely do not run all-inclusive tours, so not all meals are included. We want people to go out and eat in little locally owned places. There is free time for people to go and do a variety of locally run activities. So part of the way we set it up to ensure that money does stay in the community is to really incorporate that time to break the group up and get them going and doing different things. But measuring it is difficult. We are very transparent in all of our reporting, and we report that and publish it on our website every year. But getting it right is something I wouldn't say we've got a perfect measure there. Sarah would probably be able to give more of the detail level because she's got a team who do a lot of reporting as far as that goes. The last one, in terms of what we've learned, I think the piece there is you need to listen. You need to listen, you need to collaborate. We cannot know what is the best, and we don't pretend to know what is the best for every community in every country that we go to. We need to collaborate with our local partners, with the local communities. We need to take feedback, and we need to continue to adapt. As was said in the opening remarks by Randy, sustainability is constantly changing. What was best practice and what we did 10 years ago, we wouldn't necessarily do anymore. We need to, as we learn more, as we know more, we need to do things differently. So I think the learning applies regardless of where we are in the world. It's listening actively to local communities and working with them on that feedback.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Natalie. And thank you also to Marita and Jennifer for your illuminating presentations. It's really been eye-opening to see what people are working on in this space, and for also participating in this rich discussion, answering some very tough, I think, very interesting questions from the audience. Thank you everyone for participating, for engaging. And I really wish we had the time to get to all of your questions. Please keep them coming throughout the conference. Let's make this a really rich sharing of ideas, and feel free to come up to any of us after and throughout, and we'll get to know each other more. So thank you so much. I'm gonna close out this panel now by welcoming everyone to lunch. It's in the same place that we had breakfast, and I will ask someone from our team to tell us what time we should be back for the afternoon sessions, maybe in 1 hour. Thank you so Lunch, next session start at 2 p.m. Thank you. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our wonderful panelists.